if you're lucky, you get 80 years in this life. If you're young and you're watching this video, I mean, I'm sure little kids aren't watching this video, so you probably have used about 20% of this life already. That means if you're young, you have about 4 of those left. You know what I mean? If you cut it up into 5 pieces, you have about 4. Why are you here? Let's consider. Hello philosophers, my name is Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we explore the greatest questions of human history. I feel kind of guilty because I'm gonna go with story time here. Sadly, as all my students know, because I repeatedly tell them I was a pilot before I was a philosopher, and pilot for the Air Force. And I remember my first solo flight. I was flying a Cessna 152. Right, they call them puddle jumpers. Right, these are just the tiny planes that you're just starting out. You learn on, and I remember right before I left. Right, the instructor pilot tells me, you're ready to go. You've studied all up and everything. And I remember I hadn't quite studied all up. I had just gotten out of college. I went to the Air Force Academy. It was very tough, and I just wanted to, be done with studying. So I remember seeing chapter 14 spins in our book, and I remember thinking, I'm not allowed to spin in the Cessna, so I'm not going to read that chapter, right? Well, I'm going out to the area where the practice area where you're supposed to practice, and a spin is this. I don't even know what this is. A spin is something like this. You're flying. Well, here's what a stall is. You're flying along. You pull the throttle back to idle, meaning like you take your foot off the gas, right? And you pull up the nose until you run out of speed, and then the airplane stalls, and then you catch speed back up, and you're fine, right? A spin is when you're about to do that, and you put what they call yaw, right, into the tail. So when you snap into a stall, your airplane starts to spin, and it doesn't just pop out quite so easily, right? So I'm on my way out to the area, Colorado Springs, super bumpy, right? I think I'm so good at flying. This is honestly, I apologize. I'm not quite so conceited as I used to be, but I think I'm so good at flying. I am going to practice my stalls on the way to the practice area, right? So I'm practicing on my way to the practice area, and then just before I hit a stall, a gust of wind hits my tail and snaps me into a spin. And I remember looking dead at the ground and thinking, I'm going to die. This is it, right? I don't know how to get out of spin. I remember people telling me like it's very counterintuitive. And nobody told me that, actually. I heard somebody say that. I remember it's kind of like in the back of my head, counterintuitive, right? So I thought, like, there's no getting out of this. I'm going to die right now. And it's really bizarre feeling. I can't really explain it to you. You could watch movies where you see people just, dying, and you think to yourself, what would it be like to be right there, when it happens? But you always have this out, right? Like, you can always step back and say, oh, but that's not what's going to happen right now, right? Well, when death's coming for you, I mean, it's just coming, right? Like, that's what's crazy about it. I remember, this is a really weird way to put it, but it was much like when I first found out my wife was pregnant with our first child, right? Which is weird to say that death is like having children. But I remember, here's why, because I remember thinking like, whoa, there's no going back, right? This child's coming, right? Like, you don't get to plead with it, please just wait for a few more years till I'm super ready, right? Yeah, it was like that. It was like, there's no asking death for like, could you please just wait? I mean, just give me like 20 more years or something like that. If it's coming, it's coming. And I remember, they say time slows down, right? In these kinds of situations. And I don't believe time literally slows down, but I do think your thinking process must speed up or something. Because I remember being able to sit and think, I'm going to die. And then the next thought that popped up in my head was, that's it? Like 20, I think I was 22, 22 years? What was the point of that, right? Was it a good life? I don't know. I even wondered. I'd been living 22 years. I think I'd been pretty successful. But then I didn't even know what success looked like, right? Like what would be a successful life? And I didn't consider it till the very end. And here's what's bizarre and sad. I think most people don't ask that question until they're on their deathbed, until they're actually, about to expire. That's like fruit. Never mind, not expire. Until they're about to die, right? They're on the deathbed and they look back and they think, why did I do this? Why didn't I do more of this, right? You don't want to wait until the very end to consider these questions. It would be like, imagine your job is to build a 3,000-mile freeway or something like that, right? And you build it the best that you can, right? You build it 8 lanes both ways, right? And like on Seinfeld, like luxurious lanes, right? Hand painted or something, I don't know, right? You make it crazy nice. And then at the very end of that freeway, right as I guess you're not putting bricks down, but right as you, let's say, put the finishing touchings on the paint job, you sit back and you think, where was this freeway supposed to go to? I mean, imagine spending so much of your life doing one thing and not ever wondering where it should go. It would be total waste. Even if you did the best that you could, it would be a total waste. I don't want us to live our lives like that, right? I don't want people to get to the end and regret. So why should you do philosophy? I think one of the big reasons we should do philosophy is because it asks this question, what is the meaning of life, right? And our lives won't be successful, right? Unless we are aiming at the correct goal. And if there is no goal, right? If there is no meaning of life, we probably want to know that too, right? You probably want to know that I'm not going to waste my time going after somebody else's idea of what a good life is when there is no good life. At the very least, we want to make sure, right? We would want to have good reasons for believing what makes a life good. I've given you 2 options, right? I've given you the option of possibly there is a meaning of life and possibly there is no meaning of life. You may think there's a third option. What if I make my own meaning? I wrote a blog post on that. Check that out at Philosurfer.com, and it discusses a little bit about this. Basically comes out to the same thing, but it'll explain a little bit more. Anyway, so I think philosophy studies life and reality, and we should think about these questions before it's too late, before we're looking back and regretting things that we didn't. A couple of things before we end. I also think the earlier on that you ask these questions, the better. It's kind of like imagine again, we're making this freeway, and we might be veering off wildly, right? Going in a wildly opposite direction. And as long as we catch ourselves early enough, right, that correction, it might be a big correction, but we're not going to have to go too much for it. Like, we're not going to have that much of a difference. If we wait till the very end to make that correction, it's going to have to be a huge correction, right? In the same way in our lives, I think, you want to at least consider, what do I think is going to be a successful life, and then go for that early on. Also, there's a lot of philosophy that is not about this, right? A lot of philosophy that seems obscure and weird, and you should trust me on this one. Eventually, it does become important for these kinds of questions, right? How you answer other philosophy questions affects how you answer this question as well. So that's not something I can actually show you. Like, you're gonna have to actually do a lot of philosophy. Anyway, and check out after this episode. I'm gonna, if you're interested, I'll tell you how it all played out, the Cessna story. Well, I think the best philosophy happens in dialogue. So please feel free to comment down below anything that you thought about the episode. Here are a few further questions for consideration. Have you ever been in a near-death experience? If so, what was your mindset like? Was it like mine, or was it, thinking different things? Imagine you're on your deathbed. What kinds of things do you think would be important then? And what kinds of things do you think you might regret? And finally, what are you interested in? Right? What do you want to talk about? Give me some of your thoughts, and I'd love to make shows that are interesting to you, that you want to know about. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and tag a friend so they can join the conversation. Oh, and check out my website, Philosurfer.com. I'll put a link in the description. And that's it. Adios.